So, this is one of those situations where once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm a 32-year-old man. My wife is 30. We've been married for 9 years. We have 2 young boys, both under 5. And 6 days ago, I found out my wife is having an affair. She has absolutely no idea that I know. What makes this worse is that this didn't just shatter my marriage, it forced me to finally understand something much darker about the relationship I've been living in. People always ask questions like, why didn't you leave sooner? Or, how could you not see this coming? Some even question my judgment as a father. I didn't have the language for it before, but now I do. What I was dealing with wasn't just cheating. It was narcissistic abuse. And it started long before I ever met my wife. Growing up, my mother was extremely emotionally manipulative. She was controlling, overly critical, and cruel in ways that didn't always look obvious from the outside. Constant put-downs. Constant pressure. Nothing was ever good enough. That kind of childhood rewires your brain. When you grow up in that environment, trauma becomes familiar. And without realizing it, you end up bonding with people who recreate the same emotional chaos, because your nervous system mistakes it for love. That's called a trauma bond. And once you're in one, it's terrifyingly hard to break. Looking back, my relationship with my wife followed the classic cycle. It started with idealization. When we first met, everything moved fast. We dated for only 3 months before getting married. She love-bombed me. Constant affection. Constant sex. It was intense, exciting, overwhelming, in a way that felt incredible at the time. I opened up to her completely. I was vulnerable. I trusted her. That vulnerability later became ammunition. Once I was emotionally hooked, the devaluing began. It wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it was disguised as jokes. God, you're such an idiot. Wow, you really can't focus on anything, can you? Sometimes it was public. Sometimes private. Sometimes subtle. Sometimes brutal. She attacked my self-esteem. My intelligence. My priorities. Even my friendships. If I spent time with friends, she'd bombard my phone with messages. If I took care of myself, it was suddenly selfish. Slowly, my world got smaller. Then came the discard phase. She would regularly say things like, I'm done, and emotionally disappear, sometimes for days. She'd withdraw affection, attention, and basic emotional presence. When she wasn't discarding me, she shifted that attention onto our kids. But even that didn't last long. Kids can't regulate emotions the way adults can, and when they became inconvenient, she'd snap at them too. I started worrying deeply about what this environment was doing to their developing minds. And then came the hoovering. Every time I pulled away emotionally, she'd pull me back in, often through sex. Intense, frequent, emotionally confusing sex. At the time, I didn't realize it was another form of control. I thought all of this was just relationship problems. Stress. Depression. Normal struggles. Until the affair. A few months ago, I was looking into a continuing education conference for my job. When I mentioned it, my wife suddenly became very interested in attending instead. She said she needed it. That she hadn't been able to do something like this in years because of the kids. So I did what I always did. I sacrificed. I talked to my boss and arranged for her to go instead of me. I stayed home all week, took care of the kids, handled the house, worked around preschool schedules. Honestly, it was a great week. I bonded deeply with my boys. Everything felt solid. When she came back, she was glowing. Happier than I'd seen her in a long time. She talked about the conference, new friends she'd made, how good it felt to be social again. Then she started going out with these friends from the conference. The first time she came back, I asked how it went. Good. That was it. No stories. No details. That was strange, she always had stories. Then it happened again. And again. Each time, she was more distant. More glued to her phone. Less present with me and the kids. I told myself I was being paranoid. We've been married 9 years. We have children. She wouldn't do that. But something wouldn't let me ignore it. One night, I logged into Google Hangouts. We share passwords for accountability. I didn't want to do it, but I did. And there it was. Her messages with a man she met at the conference. Explicit. Graphic. Sexual. They were planning meetups. They were having sex. Sometimes while my kids were in the room with her. My heart rate skyrocketed. I felt physically sick. I wanted to throw up, but I still had to make dinner. Give baths. Read bedtime stories. I told my kids Daddy was sad, but not because of them. I asked for their patience. They were incredible. That was 6 days ago. For 6 days, I've been living with my wife, pretending everything is normal. She laughs. She talks. She asks if I want to have sex. And I feel like I'm dying inside. I didn't confront her. Not right away. I couldn't. I was still in shock, still trying to breathe normally, still trying to be a father while my entire reality was collapsing in my head. I contacted a lawyer. Quietly. And then I found out the retainer fee was way more than I had, and more than anyone in my family could realistically help with right away. So I had no choice. I had to keep pretending. Every day I woke up next to her, knowing she had been with another man. Knowing she was lying to my face. Knowing she was still texting him. A few nights later, she asked if I wanted to have sex. I said I had a headache. That wasn't a lie. My head felt like it was going to split open. But the truth was darker, the idea of touching her made me feel physically sick. I was terrified of STDs, terrified of what she brought back into our bed. And more than anything, it hurt. It hurt to realize how easily she could do this. How casually she could destroy everything we built. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What did I do wrong? And that's when something shifted. I stopped focusing only on the affair, and started seeing the entire relationship clearly for the first time. I started reading. Obsessively. Usually at 3 in the morning, while she slept peacefully next to me. That's when I learned what narcissistic abuse actually is. The idealization. The devaluation. The discarding. The hoovering. All of it suddenly made sense. She never truly saw me as a partner. I was a resource. Stability. Security. Emotional labor. Childcare. A safety net. And when she got bored, she found supplies somewhere else. What scared me the most wasn't even the cheating anymore. It was my kids. I started replaying moments I had pushed aside for years. Like the time one of my boys accidentally hurt the other and started crying. Instead of comforting him, she mocked him. Told him he had an ugly cry. He cried harder. I held him and tried to undo the damage with my words, while she walked away, already on her phone, already disengaged. Or how she constantly says, "I'm done," instead of actually parenting. How she emotionally disappears. How unpredictable she is. Kids need stability. They need emotional safety. And I was terrified of what would happen to them if I wasn't there to buffer the damage. The more I read, the more I understood why I stayed for so long. Trauma bonds don't feel like chains. They feel like love. Your brain is chemically addicted to the highs and lows. Dopamine. Oxytocin. cortisol, adrenaline. All firing in chaos. Your abuser doesn't need to reveal who they really are, because there is no real self. Just masks. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. Still, I stayed quiet. Because I needed a plan. And because I needed help. There was only one person left I could call. My dad. We hadn't been close in years. She convinced me he was toxic. That he was bad for our relationship. Slowly, I cut him off. I dialed his number from my car, sitting in a grocery store parking lot. He picked up immediately. I asked him if he was alone. If he promised not to freak out. Then I said it. My wife is having an affair. He didn't yell. He didn't judge. He didn't ask what I did wrong. He just said, "I'm so sorry." And that was it. I completely broke down. I cried harder than I had since I was a child. Apologized to him. Told him I was sorry for everything. And he said something I hadn't heard in a long time. "You didn't do anything wrong." That's what real love sounds like. He told me he would help me however he could. That he'd make sure I wasn't alone in this. For the first time in days, I felt something other than panic. I felt clarity. I'm still pretending. Still smiling. Still playing my role. But now, I know the truth. And I know this marriage is already over. I kept pretending. For days. Smiling. Nodding. Playing husband while quietly preparing to leave. Inside, I was exhausted. Every conversation felt fake. Every touch felt wrong. Every "I love you" sounded hollow. Like a line from a bad script she'd memorized years ago. I met with 3 lawyers. I chose one. The paperwork was already being drafted. All that was left was timing. And protecting my kids. That was the hardest part. Because once you see it, you really see it. The emotional whiplash. The instability. The way love was conditional. The way anger came out of nowhere. The way affection disappeared just as fast. I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just married to a cheater. I was married to someone who couldn't give our children emotional safety. And that changed everything. I thought back to the beginning. How fast everything moved. How intense it was. How perfect she seemed. Love bombing. I thought about how small I'd become over the years. How I doubted myself constantly. How I apologized even when I hadn't done anything wrong. Gaslighting. I thought about the affairs. The lies. The secret phones. The fake accounts. Discard. Once you learn the pattern, it's impossible to unlearn it. She didn't accidentally betray me. This was who she was. The hardest realization wasn't that she cheated. It was that she never truly loved me the way I loved her. I was a role. A function. A means to an end. And when I stopped being useful, she replaced me. But here's the part she didn't expect. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped asking what I did wrong. I stopped trying to fix something that was never real. And I chose my kids. I chose stability. I chose peace. I chose truth. Soon, she'll be served the papers. She has no idea. And for once, the secret isn't destroying me. It's saving me. If you're listening to this and something feels uncomfortably familiar. The confusion. The self-doubt. The constant walking on eggshells. Trust that feeling. Love does not feel like fear. Love does not erase you. And love does not make you feel crazy. This isn't the end of my life. It's the end of pretending.